how could you tell that the people in camp weren't as educated? The people that worked there.
I knew that the people in camp, I mean, the local people from Arkansas weren't educated too much because they were happy. I overheard them say that you never had such a good job in the camp. That, and like I said before, they thought we were midgets and couldn't read or write. Actually, I went to do a little housework for one of the employees from Arkansas, and she never had anything so good, she said. She was talking to her friends that she had life so easy, and, but they never imagined what life would be living in the camp. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had anything.
They had no. Did you know that they had no electricity or running water?
Yes, I knew they talked that they didn't have all the electricity or running water because in the rural areas they were brought up and didn't have any of these things. And that's why they said they were living in the barracks. They had better barracks than we did, the employees on the campgrounds, their husbands. And so they, they said they were living quite luxuriously because of these things that they never dreamed that they would have. And if it weren't for the camp, the Jerome, where we were, why, they would have never known such things.
They actually, I think this gave rise to quite a lot of resentment.
Yeah, resentment. Mm-hmm.
Because they thought that some people thought that the people in camp were just had it easy.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, they thought we were getting everything easy, but they didn't realize that we had to give up so much back home, what we had. But they needed to be educated. Um, One thing that I never forget was each mess hall was rationed so many pounds of flour or so many pounds of meat or something. And one of the fellows that were in charge of the meat was taking some of the ham home. And we found out that he was taking it home because their daughter used to brag to her friend. It was during ration, meat was rationed and sugar was rationed, that, oh, my dad or my mom has lots of meat and sugar in the basement. And so because she blurted to her friend, and because of jealousy, naturally, they reported and they found a stack of ham and sugar in the basement that they had stolen from camp. So that made it meant that the mess hall had that much less ham or meat or whatever he took home. Stole.
That's infuriating. That's pretty infuriating.
Yes, it was. To think that here we were put into camp not from our choice, but because the government put us there, and we didn't. I think the Japanese people were very cooperative. We didn't call riots. We didn't have riots, or we just said, well, this is it. We'll just do as the government tells us to do, and go peacefully. And so we went peacefully. We didn't have, of course, later on there were some young people that caused a little trouble, but as a whole, why, we just went and did what we had to do to live and look forward to the day when we could come back to California.
Yeah. Were there any friendships between the white people in camp and the evacuees?
Well, I don't know if there was any close friendship or not, but I'm sure there were, because they live close, everyday living, and I didn't associate too much because I just had my family and I was busy with my family, and I just stayed close to our barracks. But I'm sure there were some.
Did anyone from the local communities come and do you any services? Did people come, like, say, for Christmas or for any other holiday?
Yes, Christmas was a sad time for us because we celebrated Christmas at home in the churches, but the Quakers, the Quakers donated and brought gifts for all the children, and that I shall remember forever. It was a little gift, a little toy, and some little candy, I think, but it made Christmas a little lighter. They had Christmas service at the camp church, and my brothers, being in the army, always sent something for the children uh, through the mail. And so we always had something. He would send candies or dried soup or something, and so people would always say, your children, your brother always sending you something, and you're very lucky. Of course, we had a store in camp that was selling things, but we didn't have too much money to spend. But, a dollar or two I would go to the camp and buy a box of some crackers or candy or something for the children, so they wouldn't miss the little things of life.
Well, that's the first example I've heard of. Actually, I'm so happy to hear about the Quaker Group.
Oh yes, the Quakers did a lot, and to this day I remember that they were the ones that came in and did so much for the people, especially for the children.
Were they local?
At Christmas time.
Do you know were they local?
No, I think the Quakers from all over the country sent in contributions, because here on a few doors over, there was a Quaker family, Quaker man, became friends, and they remember collecting and sending things to the different camps.
So nothing was sent from local people in Arkansas. It was more like the outside world.
I think so. I'm not sure where, but I do know the Quakers sent in lots of things especially at Christmas time.
Okay. How aware were you of the racial segregation in Arkansas at the time?
How?
Were you aware of how racially segregated Arkansas was?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know there was segregation in Arkansas at all. But I knew in California there was, because when I was a youngster, we were sent to all Asian schools, and I thought, well, there was nothing, we were children, so I didn't think nothing too much about it at the time. But after I moved to Cortland, California, my brother was still in school, in grade school, and he attended all grade school in Cortland, California, and when he went to high school, then they were integrated.
Tell me what your job was at camp.
My husband was charge of the carpentry department, so anything that had to be fixed, woodwork or cabinets or things, why he would go around, and other people would take lumber and something because we had no furniture, they would make bookcases or bookshelves or something for their barracks to make it more like home. But since Bill was in charge, it wasn't right for him to steal or take lumber, so we didn't have those things. I mean, he was able to build it, but he felt that it wasn't right for him to bring things home, so we didn't have.
Like the people in the mess hall could bring home meat, though.
Yes, well,
people in
yeah, that's it. We couldn't. My mother-in-law worked in the kitchen, but of course she couldn't bring things, extra things home for us, because I felt it wasn't right.
And how much did your husband make?
My husband top pay was $16 a month. And my mother-in-law was getting $12 a month working in the mess hall. And I know some people in the other job had got $8 a month. But we were given, each family was given coupons for clothing, but we had to order them through Montgomery Ward. And so I would order things from Montgomery Ward, but I would get notice that they were out of stock and we would never get them.
How about Sears? Did you order from Sears?
No, it was just Montgomery Ward. I remember that. So, of course, some people got some clothes and things, but I remember, I still don't know how I got clothes for my children, except that my brother, being in the Army and out of, he would send things. And I remember my little son would open the package, and he opened it, and he would be so unhappy. He says, "I don't want rags, I want toys." But that's how I was able to clothe them.
How did you spend your evenings?
Pardon?
What did you do in the evening? What would you do at night after dinner? What would you do? What would your family do?
Oh, well, I would take my after dinner in the evening, and what was all right, well, then I would take walks with them, or they would have an entertainment in the community hall or on the open, and we would take part. But there wasn't much for me to do because my children were smaller. But the ones with the older children had different things, dancing and I don't quite remember, but I know they had something for the older ones. But I never took part because my children were too small.
Did your daughter go to school?
Later, yes, she went to my older daughter went to kindergarten in camp, and I had to walk her. And of course, the teachers were all camp evacuees, and so she did all right.
Was it in any way fun for your children, do you think, to be there?
Well, the children didn't know that, what it was all about. They made friends. My daughter was older, so she made friends with girls her age in camp. And my son was too young to, so I used to just take him for walks and things to keep him entertained. But I used to bathe them because it was so humid. I used to bathe them maybe twice a day to keep them clean and keep them comfortable, because I didn't have to cook or I didn't have to do dishes. I had more time to spend with him.
That's a good thing.
So that was one of the good things, that I was able to, spend so much time with them.
Did you have to have a job, or were you able to stay home and take care of the children?
Well, somebody wanted, somebody to, one of the wives of the employees from Arkansas wanted, so I thought, well, my mother-in-law said, why don't you go just to get out of the house, and she wouldn't watch the children for me. So I did some housework for them, like cleaning the house or something at 25 cents an hour or 50 cents an hour. 25 cents an hour, I think, because I used to come back with $1, and then I could go to the store and buy something for the children.
Wow. Did you ever go into town?
I didn't go into town.
How about your husband? Did he go into town?
Yes, and my Bill went. I think there was a day a truck would take them into town to buy things, but I never did. My brother would send me things, or he would come and visit us. He was able to get a pass, visit us, and he would bring us things, which we enjoyed and share with other people.
I'm going to get to your brother in a minute, but first of all, how much did it affect you? How aware were you in camp that you were surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards?
Pardon?
Did you think about the fact every day? How conscious were you of the barbed wire and the guards?
Well, I think the barbed wire made us feel like we were prisoners, especially because on each corner there was a high tower, and there was a guard sitting up there with a rifle ready to shoot us, I suppose, if we tried to escape. But no one wanted to escape or do anything. I think the Niseis and the Sanseis were very cooperative, and I don't think they had that kind of work, had to worry about. But I just went about my own little ways of keeping busy, keeping the children busy from morning till night, and that was it.
Now I want to talk about your brother. Um, tell me the story. Tell me his name, and then how did he come? How did he come to be in the military?
I have three brothers. The two younger brothers volunteered and signed up for the Army before evacuation because they felt, that they were in America. It was their duty to sign up, and they were accepted and so they were, when we went to Arkansas, they were at Camp Shelby, and they were able to come and visit us, not at the same time. One time, my younger brother, Louis Furushiro, was going to come to visit me, but it was a little too early, so he stopped at the little coffee shop until the gates opened, and a man came and said something that he couldn't understand, but he was going to shoot him. But somebody said to duck, so he ducked, and the mirror in back of the bar was all broken to pieces. And so when he came to visit me, his eyes were all red, and I said, "What happened?" And he says, "Well, I was drinking coffee, and this man said," called him, a name, and said that you killed my son. He was in the Army, I suppose, and he killed him. And so there was a big write-up about him. And they asked him if he wanted to press charges, and he said no, because the man was old and he lost his son, and he could understand.
Your brother is too understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me again. Let's just get that story again. Was your brother both Louis and Hank, right? Were they both in the 442nd?
Yes, two of my brothers, Henry and Louis Furushiro, were in the 442nd Company B. I understand later that they weren't supposed to be put into the same out company, but by some quirk of circumstances, when they arrived in overseas France, why they ran into each other and wanted to know, "What are you doing here?" And the other said, "What are you doing here?" And they were surprised. So when my Henry was shot and died of shrapnel wound shrapnel in France, my younger brother was there, and when they brought the body in, he was there. So that was really sad. And the sergeant of the group, 442nd group, is Henry Hayashi.
We're gonna stop. Okay. Tell me again about your two brothers and where were they both in the 442nd?
I have two brothers, Henry and Louis Furushiro, and they volunteered for the Army when we were back in California before evacuation, and they were in Camp Shelby, I think, in back east when we were in Jerome, so they were able to come and visit me, and they would send things for the children like clothing or goodies, candies or cookies or something, which the young children really enjoyed. And one time he sent a package, and when the Lester, my son, opened the package, it was clothes. And he says, "I don't want rags, I want toys." And that really impressed me because at the time there weren't much toys that he could play with except the little things, a rocking horse or something my father-in-law made, or Bill would make a little something out of lumber for him to play with.
And how unusual was it that both brothers were enlisted in the? I mean, how ironic was that your brothers were in the army and there you were incarcerated?
Well, to me, I felt that they were serving the government because it was before the uh, evacuation. My father objected when they said they were going to volunteer, as so many other boys did at the time. But this is what they wanted to do. But they weren't. The government wasn't supposed to put them together in one place in case something happened. But when they went overseas, they were shocked or surprised that that they were there, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And the other would say, "What are you doing here?" And here they were in the same outfit company, 442nd Company B. And so when my Henry died in action with a shrapnel wound, and they brought the body in, my younger brother Lou saw him, and it was quite an experience for the boys around him that they would see each other in the situation that they did.
How awful for Lou that he had to see his brother.
It is. I don't think he'll ever forget it. That he was there, and they brought him in. Lou was hit on his thumb with something, and he was out of commission for a while. While with Henry, he was wounded before, and he was in the hospital. And the hospital, he was quite a jolly fellow, and he would get up and try to, talk to the other injured people, patients. And so the hospital wanted to keep him there in the hospitals because he would cheer the others. But the person in charge of the in the action part said, "Well, if you need him in the hospital, we need him more for, for the morale of the boys." And so he was sent back to the front, and that was when he was killed.
They were stationed at Camp Shelby. Yeah, go ahead. They were stationed at Camp Shelby, which I think was in Mississippi, right?
Mississippi, yes.
Now, did you get to go see him?
No, we couldn't. No, we didn't leave camp. We couldn't go to camp. I mean, they came to see us at different times, but we didn't go out of camp. And besides, I had the children, so I had no desire to go camp with them.
Didn't they have dances over at Camp Shelby?
Pardon?
Did they have dances over at Camp Shelby?
Yes, I think so. The USO was quite active with the boys, and they had things to do at Camp Shelby, I'm sure.
Now tell me about what happened when your brother Lou came to visit you.
Well, when my brother Lou came to visit me, it was too early in the morning, and the gates of the camp weren't open, so he stopped at a little coffee shop. I can't remember the name. That was there, and he was having coffee when one elderly man came in and looked at him and brought his gun in and took a shot at him. But someone told him to duck, so he ducked, and he missed being shot, actually, but he had the shrapnel or whatever in his eyes. So when he came to visit me in camp, his eyes were swollen and red. So the first thing I said, "What happened?" And he told me what had happened. So the incident, was in the Arkansas paper, and he wanted to know if he wanted to press charges against the old man, but he said no. His son was killed in action and by the Japanese. But being Japanese, although he had his uniform, United States uniform on, it didn't matter to him.
Now
His-
tell me this. Just let's back up again. Tell me. So he walks into a cafe and he's wearing a U.S. Army uniform.
Yes, he was. My brother had, they had to wear the uniform wherever they went. So he had the Army uniform on and was having coffee when the man came in and took a shot at him. It didn't matter to him but his face was Japanese, and that's why he shot him.
And your brother wasn't angry about this?
No, he wasn't.
And
My brother wasn't angry because he was an old man and he lost his son by the Japanese, and because he was face was Japanese, why he just shot him.
Now tell me about you. Now let's get it from your side. So he comes in to visit you that morning. Tell me that story.
Well, he came in to visit me, and like I said, I noticed his eyes.
Don't say like I said, because we'll cut the other part out.
Oh.
Just tell me again, just from your side now. Here you are, you're a young mother.
Yes.
Tell me what happened.
Well, when he came in to visit me in Jerome, my brother Louis came in with swollen red eyes, and so the first thing, like a mother, I would notice, what happened to your eyes? And he told me what had happened, that he was shot at in the camp.
In the cafe.
In the cafe, but he said he wasn't angry because he knew that the man was upset because he lost his son by the Japanese.
That's still fairly appalling, though, that your brother would be in uniform and be shot at.
That's what I couldn't understand, because it was a United States Army uniform, but being in Arkansas and being an older man, maybe he just didn't face him. He just thought, about the Japanese, and that's what started to, I guess, upset him.
And tell me what you thought.
My first thought was, how could he do such a thing when my brother was in the United States Army fighting for the country just like his son? But I guess the father, being a father, he was too upset to understand. He wasn't understanding. He couldn't understand. But maybe he didn't know that the United States Army was made up of all different nationalities.
Well, how can you not be mad? By the same token, you could be mad at every white person you saw.
Well, I could have been mad at the government, too, for sending us to camp when we were citizens, but the government had their ways, and we didn't want to make trouble, so we all went, we were told what to do, and we just did it. We just took it in stride and tried to cooperate and make things easier for everyone.
You told me, I think, that his face was swollen?
His eyes were swollen. I think it just glazed. If he hadn't ducked, I think my brother would have been shot. But because someone had hollered to duck, he ducked. He was in the Army, and he was, I guess, the command to do something was to do it, so he just ducked. And so it just glazed his eyes. He wasn't shot in the eyes, but I think the powder burn from the shot burned his eye.
Did it hurt his vision at all?
Pardon?
Did it hurt his vision?
No, at the time it was bad, but he recovered. He's all right. And the incident was written in the Arkansas paper, too, in Little Rock, which I have a copy, but I don't know where it is.
I'd like to see that,
Mm-hmm.
if you can find it.
We should change tack.
Okay.